Back in 2002, my boyfriend and I traveled to Europe together. I had just graduated from the University of Texas at Austin, and we were lucky enough to have the opportunity to go. After weighing the many options of traveling around Europe, he and I agreed to rent a car and camp throughout the continent. I highly recommend traveling Europe this way. After arriving and spending a few days in London, we rode the ferry from Dover, England to Calais, France, where we picked up our car. For the most part, the campsites were close to the cities, only a short bus ride into town. Venice was probably the one place where we had to actually take a boat across the Laguna Veneta from the campsite to the city center. The camping in Italy was a little different. The sites were not as nice and many of them were hard to find. One night, outside of Naples, we had such a terrible time finding a campsite, we paid a family to put up our tent on the beach in front of their store. We sat outside their store watching the sunset and the children playing volleyball. We also ate fresh mozzarella bufalo for the first time in our lives, and no other mozzarella bufalo has ever compared to it since. We were kept up all night at that campsite with a birthday party going on the beach, but the memory of that will far outweigh the lost sleep. As we continued traveling through Italy, the Czech Republic, Switzerland, and France, we had many fun adventures. One night, while we were at another amazing campsite in Interlaken, we were poured on once again. This time it was throughout the night and into the next day. Our tent at the time was not waterproof, and my boyfriend and I kept moving closer and closer together in the tent while the water creeped into it from all sides. Eventually, I took up the only dry spot in the tent, and my boyfriend had to finally give up and move into the car. We were miserable. The next day, we went and bought ourselves a Swiss tent that was guaranteed to be waterproof. Of course, we didn't need it again for the whole trip, but we still have it, so it's definitely paid off. That campsite was between two lakes, which is what Interlaken happens to mean, and we would watch windsurfers fly overhead each morning as we had our breakfast and coffee. Despite the rains, we stayed at this site at least 1 or 2 more days than we had actually planned because Switzerland was so beautiful and the weather was just perfect after the rains. Another most memorable time was in Florence. This was actually another rain mishap. We were walking aimlessly around Florence, in my opinion, the most beautiful city we visited in Italy, and of course it started to rain. Right at that moment we looked over and noticed a wine bar off to the right. We ducked into the bar and had a seat. It was the tiniest little place, with tall ceilings and walls covered with wine bottles. We had several glasses of the most fantastic wines, bowls of olives, and smoked fish plates. We met another American gal there, and we drank and talked and danced the night away. At one point, a truffle dealer came in to sell his wares. It was actually the first time I had ever heard of truffles, and he showed them to us and told us how much they were worth. The bartender made a bruschetta with them, thinly sliced on top, and it was heaven. To this day, I still have not eaten another truffle, but I do know that they have the best earthy flavor of anything I've ever tried. On our way back to Calais to drop off our car, we visited as much as we could in France. We had already paid for a hotel in Paris, so we knew we had to do that, but our money was dwindling fast. We sped through the French Alps, rooting for Lance Armstrong's 4th victory at the time. We camped in a campground in the middle of Paris one night, the most packed and rowdy campground of the trip. You could barely walk, there were so many tents. There was also this great store on the campground that made sure to supply those lovely Parisians with their daily baguette. In Paris, you'll see everybody walking around in the morning with a baguette in their arm. By the time we got back to London, the only thing we wanted to do was relax. We had a choice, sleep in a hotel for the last night or go see a movie. I think we made the best decision to see a movie because we were exposed to drinks and a movie, which was a novelty to us. We had never been to the Alamo Drafthouse in downtown Austin because they didn't play any first-run movies at the time. That last night, out of money and ready for home, we slept in the airport and dreamt of all the great times we had on our journeys. If I go to Europe again, I will do it the exact same way, except probably with a bigger budget.